So we were talking about kidney donations. Of course, we didn't get to that, not even close. I hope to get to it today, and we may have even a cameo appearance by a famous, notable figure in our base medrash. Yes, you're shocked, Ben, I know, but we'll see what that means soon. Now, but before we talk about that, we get involved in the Shaila. We know the Torah says it's a mitzvah to save someone. No question about that. Lo yisam adam recha is a mitzvah Torah, you got to save someone. But we were talking about at what expense. Meaning, we said, for sure you don't got to give up your life for someone else. For sure. But let's say there is a risk involved. 50% risk, 30% risk. Do you have to risk your life to save someone else? And we explained so eloquently that even though by other lavim it's clear like day, you don't risk any of your life, even if there's a nano chance that you may die if you don't eat a pig, for whatever reasons, you eat it right away, there's no question about it. But we said, maybe when on the equation is someone else will die, maybe there are special rules. Since someone else will die, and you're only risking your life, maybe this lav of lo yisam adam recha is an exception to the rule. And we said that's a big chiddush, that it should be considered exception to the rule, because we have our standard rules. By every lav, you never risk any of your life, right? Even if it's an infinitesimal chance, you don't risk your life. So it's a big chiddush by lo yisam. No, maybe here you do risk your life, 50%, 40%. That's what we're dealing with. And we brought a bunch of rayas that it seems we don't paskin like the Shalmi, and that you actually do not have to risk your life to save someone else. Again, for sure you don't got to give up your life, but last year we brought many proofs that we do not paskin like the Yeshalmi, and you do not have to risk your life to save someone else. And we're going to talk today about volunteering, but definitely there is no chiyuv. Someone's drowning, you're a poor swimmer yourself, there's a chance that you'll die if you try to save him. You don't have to risk your life. That's what we came out, and that's what the Mishnah Berurah paskin, that's what the Aruch HaShulchan paskin, not like the Beit Yosef, not like the Yeshalmi. So we're gonna go a little bit more into detail today, because the Torah Tamima wants to bring a proof to the contrary, like the Yeshalmi, that you can risk your life and you should risk your life. What's the Torah Tamima's proof? The Torah Tamima's proof is from a Gemara in Brachis, that we know a famous Gemara, there was an arod. What's an arod? In modern Hebrew it's a wild donkey, but clearly in the Gemara's time, arod was some type of serpent. And there was a serpent that was being mazik many the community, and they told Yeshivat Ohr, right? You know the story? So what did Yeshivat say? Show me where this serpent lives, this dragon lives. And he put his foot on the hole of the dragon, and the dragon bit him, and the dragon died. And basically, Yeshivat Ohr saved the day. And what was his famous last words? He came with the dragon to the Medrash and said, what did he say? He said, it is not the dragon that kills, it is the sin that kills. Rubini, see my sons, ain't I right, Mamus? Ela hate Mamus. It's not the dragon that kills, it's sin that kills. So everyone in the community was getting killed because they had sins, so it wouldn't protect them. But I say, Shamru, right? What was to the regular person who meets Arod? Arod is this serpent. And what was to the Arod who ends up with a duel against Yeshivat Ohr? It's a famous Gemara, right? You teach this in kindergarten, right? Arod against Yeshivat Ohr. So the Rasha says, wait 1 minute over here. How in the world did Yeshivat Ohr risk his life? How did he take this risk? He antagonized the Arod. He put his foot right over the den where the Arod lived. How could it be? And the Mashal has no answer. The Mashal has no good answer at this point. So Torah Tamima says it must be. The Torah Tamima says, see from here, that Chanina ben Doisa knew that there was a chance that there was going to be a nest. He knew that there was a chance. Chanina ben Doisa was a big man. So he took the risk. He said, I'm going to risk my life to save the community, to save other people. So you see from here, says the Torah Tamima, right? Torah Tamima is a famous Chumash, beautiful Chumash. The Torah Tamima brings us over here that, you see from here, you're allowed to risk your life in order to save other people, which is what we said is not the Halacha. We said not that way. Oh. So how are we going to refute this? Seems like a riot. Oh. So the Tzitz Eliezer says very cogently, says, something's wrong here. The Torah Tamima's understanding is like this. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa said, I'm going to risk my life. I think a nest will happen. I'm not sure. I'm willing to risk my life in order to kill this dragon against the community. So Tzitz Eliezer says, that's called risking. That's called, you're relying on a miracle is called, 50%. Halachically, are you ever allowed to rely on a miracle? Is it possible? He made this calculus. Maybe I die, maybe I won't die. Why won't I die? Because maybe a nest will happen. You're going to rely on a nest as part of the equation that maybe a nest will happen, and that's why it's only a risk? That's for sure. You're not going to give up your life to save someone else. That's clear like day. It's a risk only because maybe a nest. There's a lot of rely on a nest to make it to say it's only a risk. Oh, that's impossible. He brings a proof. He brings a proof that we never use the concept of a nest when it comes to equations in halacha. There's a famous shaila that was brought to the Chassam Sofer by who? By his student, Dr. Moshe Mendelssohn. If you know who he is, he was the father of the Jewish Enlightenment, which is not a good thing for us. Basically, he was the father of the Reform movement, sort of, and he was actually a student of Chassam Sofer. And the issue was, how long do you have to wait to bury someone after he's pronounced dead? How long does you have to wait? He was a frum guy, but he's frum. He was just enlightened. His acolytes, his students were not too frum, but he himself, Moshe Mendelssohn, was frum. So his question was, how long should you wait after someone is pronounced dead? So Moshe Mendelssohn said he thinks we should wait 3 days. Keep the corpse in the moratorium. Keep him there for 3 days. In the morgue, keep him there for 3 days, and then we know he's dead. And because maybe he's not dead, maybe he's not alive. And he brings a proof because there's a Mishnah in the Brisa in Smachos that there was some guy who was buried, and his relatives went to visit him after 3 days to maybe put a tombstone on, and the guy said, "Hey, get me out of here!" And the guy was alive. So you see that it's possible that we mistakenly pronounce someone dead.
It actually just happened yesterday. The woman was buried alive, and she's like, "Hello, I'm still alive."
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, got to tell me about this. So mistakenly, someone could be pronounced dead. Not mistakenly. All the signs, the signs was there, but maybe it's a mistake or whatever. So he said, wait 3 days. So Moshe Mendelssohn brought and he invoked this Mishnah to adduce his. So Chassam Sofer went to town. We know that's not the halacha. We know you bury right away. And the halacha is after we pronounce someone's dead. However, we decide that you only wait a half an hour. That's the most you have to wait, a half an hour. And Chassam Sofer says, and this that you found a story, a outlier story in the Mishnah over there, that was a nest, and we never rely on a nest. Nisim never come into the rubric of halacha. Now what is Chassam Sofer talking about? He's talking about we don't rely on a nest even to think that maybe someone's alive. Meaning, maybe the guy's alive, don't bury him. It's not nice to bury a dead person, a live person. Ask Edgar Allan Poe. He'll tell you it's not a good thing to bury a live person, right? So we're talking about burying a live person or not. And Chassam Sofer says, half an hour. That's it. If he's pronounced dead, and don't tell me these stories of Nisim that a guy woke up after 3 days. We don't rely on Nisim halacha, not even if the specter is the sphere that maybe still alive. So the Tzitz Eliezer says we see from here, you never rely on Nisim to make a equation in halacha. So if Rabbi Chanina's daisa was, maybe I'll live because I rely on a nest. No, if you're relying on a nest, there's no maybe there. You're not relying on a nest at all. So says the Hydra and others, it must have been that the reason why Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa did this is because for him, it was 100% sure he was going to save, and for him, it's not even called a nest. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa said, there's the dragon, there's me. I'm sure going to be saved. I'm relying on a nest? No, for me it's not a nest. For me it's not a nest. How do you know that? Because we have famous Gemaras in Tainus. What are the famous Gemaras in Tainus of Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa? You remember the famous Gemaras? His daughter by accident put vinegar in the candle. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa said, big deal. It ain't no big deal. It will burn anyway, and it outburned the whole day. Malum ben Eason, there was a story that they had no money, right? They had no money. I mean, he wouldn't, we'll see soon, he wouldn't use his mystical power or Nisim, he wouldn't use it to get money. So we all want to say a story. The whole world is being supported by Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, and Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa lived on carobs, a calf of carobs, right? So the famous story is here that his wife was a little bit embarrassed because they had no bread for Shabbos, right? So Erev Shabbos, everyone's baking and there's all the smoke coming out of the smokestack. So his wife would throw in just leaves to create like this smoke. And the wife's neighbor knew that this whole thing was a facade, a farce, and she bursts in and says, I know you have nothing there. And then she opens the oven and it's filled with bread. And she screams, Mrs. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, bring the equipment to take off, they have to scrape off the bread. Bring the scraper. And she said, yeah, I was going to get it. And the Gemara says she really was going to get it. Because she knew that the nest would happen. Malum ben Eason. If you knew the nest was going to happen, so why don't you have bread every week? No, she didn't want to have bread every week. They wanted to live very poorly. But she anticipated that the nest would happen. It wasn't a suffix. The Gemara says, one day his wife actually broke down. She said to her, I can't take it anymore. I got to go to Macy's. So Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa said, what do you want me to do? Well, I don't care. Get me some money. So Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa said, okay. He prayed, and sure enough, what came down? A golden leg from a table. So he gave it to his wife. Here's a credit card. Go. And then he saw in a dream. He said, when you go up, all the other tzaddikim have a 4-legged table, 3-legged table. You're gonna have one less. So his wife felt bad. So his wife said, give it back. And he prayed, and the hand came down from heaven and took away the golden leg. And the Gemara said that was a bigger nest. It was a bigger nest that God, or the heavens, was willing to take back a present they gave. Right? These are just there's stories here there's a whole story here that he had a bunch of goats, and it wasn't really his goats. He was watching them for someone else, and they said that his goats were eating things, were stealing whatever, pasturing in other people's, grazing in other people's fields. He said, if that happens, the bears should eat all my goats. But if it's not true, then the goats should come with beards on their horns. And sure enough, all the goats came with beards on their horns. There's many stories of Chanina ben Doisa, big man, right? But kids, what I'm trying to show you here, that it's not like a Torah Tmima said. The Torah Tmima said, Chanina ben Doisa was, maybe there will be a nest, maybe there won't be a nest. So he risked his life. Because maybe there'll be a nest. If there's maybe, then there's none. You can't put nest into the equation. There's no maybe when it comes to nest. So how did he do what he did? How did he attack the dragon? So I brought all these stories to show you. Chanina ben Doisa, his regular way of living was always Nisim. It wasn't called Nisim for him. It wasn't called supernatural for him. He knew 1,000,000% that when he will not die when he puts his foot on the den. And that's what the Gemara says. Chanina ben Doisa says it's not the aroid that kills, right? It's the sin that kills. So again, entire people thought he had a raya from the Gemara Chanina ben Doisa that you do risk your life, and we're proving that that's a mistake. That it is not called he risked his life at all. But seemingly, we do have a Gemara that seems like the Torah Tmima, because we have another Gemara with dragons. We have a Gemara in Kedushin that Rabbi Acha, brother of Yaakov, was come to visit town. Come to visit town. Rabbi Yaakov is coming to visit town. Abaye said, no one should put him up. No one should be hospitable to him. Why? Because there was a Hydra. What's a Hydra? A three-headed or seven, depends on which mythology, which religion, or which country you're in. A Hydra does come from water, but because it lives in water, the Hydra, right? So the Hydra is a seven-headed dragon, right? Fine. And it seems that it haunted the yeshiva. And people the Talmidim would go in there and they would get either killed or hurt by the Hydra, right? By this animal, right? So now we know why the name of the shir is Haunting Hydra Havoc. Because the Hydra was haunting the Beit Medrash. And Abaye said, listen, this Hydra is really giving us a big problem over here. When Rabbi Yaakov comes to town, don't invite him. And then he'll be forced to sleep in the Beit Medrash. And then he'll have to have a duel with the Hydra, and hopefully Rabbi Yaakov is going to win against the Hydra. So what did the Gemara say here? So he said, Abaye said, no one should invite him to town because this Hydra is menacing everyone. Efshir de mischarish nisa. Maybe a nest will happen. Oh, bus, but who be'abanan? He went, bus means he slept. He went to sleep in the Beit Medrash because no one gave him a place to sleep. In Midlei Kitanina the Shiverish, the Hydra appeared to him like a serpent with 7 heads. Kol Kari the Kara. Every time Rabbi Acha would daven, he would bend down to God to pray to be saved. One of the heads fell off, and I guess it didn't grow back. All right, and he did it 7 times, and sure enough, Mr. Hydra is dead. The next day, Rabbi Yaakov wasn't too happy. He realized he was set up. He said to Abaye, it's good that a nest happened to me because, it's not nice that you made me sleep with the Hydra over there. That's the story. That's the story of the Gemara. I couldn't even make it up if I wanted to, right? So there it is, right? Now, wait a minute. That story, and here's the Mashal also asks, if you look at the way the Abaye says, maybe a nest will happen. And then Rabbi Acha said back, it's lucky that a nest happened or else I would be dead today. So from here, it does seem that the Torah Tamima is right in his analysis. That it was, how can Abaye set him up that way? How can Abaye do that to him? How can he do that? So it seems that Abaye said, maybe a nest will happen, because that's his lashon, efshir de mischarish nisa, and Abaye felt that Rabbi Acha, we can even set him up. We can even set him up and put him into a Safek Sakana in order to save the community. So here's a chayra right. You can put someone in a Safek Sakana, because that's what Rabbi Acha really had to do. So Abaye can set him up because that's what Rabbi Acha really should do. Safek Sakana for Rabbi Acha in order to save everyone else. In order to save the community. That's what it seems. And the Rasha asks more. How could Abaye do this? I mean, the Gemara in Shabbos says, whatever nest happens to you, you lose part of your, you lose some money in your bank account. And the celestial bank account upstairs, so when a nest happens to you, you sort of like lose some credit up there. It costs something. So the Masha asks, meaning the Masha was like, didn't hold like a Torah Tamima. The Masha says, he doesn't understand. Masha lived 100 years before the Torah Tamima. But we're going to set up a Torah Tamima says, look, from this Gemara I see, you put yourself in a Safek Sakana to help against the Vada Sakana, to help to save other people. And the Masha was like, that can't be right. That can't be right that they set him up that way. They put him in a Safek Sakana. And also they made him lose Schusim. So the Masha has an amazing shot with all the Mashkichim always use this Masha. The Masha says, no, you're misunderstanding the Gemara there. Same thing we said before. Abaye knew that Vishur Rabbi Acha was going to get saved. There was no question. He knew 1,000,000%. I guess Rabbi Acha also was like a big miracle worker, and there was no question. So what was the issue then? He says that what Abaye was not sure about, Abaye was not sure how would the Hydra attack him. Would the Hydra try to kill Rabbi Acha, ambush him? Or would the Hydra be a gentleman and offer Rabbi Acha a duel? Meaning, says the Marsha, for sure Rabbi Acha was going to win. There's no question about that. The question was, how was he going to win? Was he going to win that there would be a duel, and then Rabbi Acha would daven to God because he knew he was going to be attacked? That would not even be called a nes. If Rabbi Acha would daven and be saved through his davening, that wouldn't even be called a nes. That wouldn't even be called a nes. Or was the Hydra going to ambush him and attack him before he had time to daven, and then it would be called a nes. So that was a suffix. Abaye said like this: for sure Rabbi Acha is going to get saved. For sure Rabbi Acha is going to get saved. No question. But will it be through tefillah because the Hydra will present himself a frontal attack? Oh, if it's through tefillah, then it's not even a nes. It's not even called a nes. If it's an attack, if it's an ambush, then it'll be considered a nes. Rabbi Acha for sure will be saved. There's no question about that. But then a little bit of merit would be taken off from Rabbi Acha. So Abaye made an equation. The Hydra for sure is going to get killed. He's a menace to the community. He's a danger to the community. What's the issue? Well, maybe the way Rabbi Acha is going to do it is through a nes, and maybe it'll take off a little bit from the credit of Rabbi Acha, because whenever a nes happens, somebody take a little credit. Abaye said, for that it's worth it. It's worth it to risk that Rabbi Acha will take off a little of his credit in order to save the whole community, and there's a chance that it won't be any credit taken off, because the chance is that Rabbi Acha would actually just pray. And that's exactly what happened. At the end of the day, what happened was Rabbi Acha actually prayed. And that's how the Hydra died. So, and what did the next day Rabbi Acha say back? Rabbi Acha said back, he said exactly that back. You know, it's lucky that I got to pray to kill this Hydra. So it didn't cost anything. But it could have been the other way, and it would have cost me a little bit. That's what Rabbi Acha said back. The Mashal has a different version. Rabbi Acha said back, oh, it wasn't my prayer that did it. Don't think it was a prayer. It was a nes. It was a nes. And it did cost a little bit of credit was taken off from my bank account upstairs. Be it as it may, what we're seeing from here, the Mashal is also learning it wasn't that Rabbi Acha risked his life to save the community. It wasn't that Abaye put Rabbi Acha in a Makam Sakana. It was 100% sure he was going to get saved. 100% sure he was going to get saved. The question was the nuance, how was it going to be saved? So tefillah or not? And that's why the Mashkichim, they always quote this Mashal. Why do they quote this Mashal? When they want to talk about tefillah, they always quote this Mashal and say, wow, you see what tefillah, if you're saved to tefillah, that's not even called a nes. That's like, of course this is going to happen. If you daven, for sure you're going to get saved. That's where the Mashkichim come in and quote this Mashal. Be it as it may, we brought two stories of monsters and demons and hydras and dragons to prove you do put yourself in a safek sakana, but we have refuted those proofs and said no proof, because both those cases there was no risk at all. Fine. The Meshech Chachma also deals with this. The famous Meshech Chachma, we are in the hallowed halls of Ohr Somayach, and he brings a proof from a pasuk in Shemais. Why? Because what does Hashem say to Moshe by the burning bush? He says, go to Egypt and save your brethren. Right? That's what he says. And the pasuk says that Hashem says, go to Egypt and save your brethren, and don't worry about it. Don't worry that, if you remember, Moshe had to run away from Egypt. Why did Moshe have to run away? Because he got into a fight with who? Dathan and Aviram. That's how the whole thing started. Dathan and Aviram were upset at Moshe because he started up with them, and they went and tattled to Paroi. So Hashem said, Lech shuv Mitzrayim ki meisu kol ha'anoshim ha'mevakshim nafshecha. Because all those people who have tried to hurt you or seek your demise, they're gone. So Hashem said to Moshe, don't worry, go to Mitzrayim, because Dathan and Aviram, who were instrumental in making you run away and who is a potential danger, they're dead. They're dead, they became blind, they're mitzvah, you don't got to worry about them. But says the Meshech Chachma, what do you see from here? What do you see from here? What was the issue here? Should Moshe go to Mitzrayim and save Klal Yisrael? Right? When Klal Yisrael was in bondage, you could assume some of them were getting killed. And Hashem said to Moshe, don't worry, you're not in danger. Because those people who seek to hurt you, they're not around anymore. And let's say those people were around. Let's say Dathan Aviram was still alive. Shouldn't Moshe go ahead and still try to save Klal Yisrael? What are you talking about? We're talking about saving people's lives, saving Klal Yisrael, or staying in Midian. So what was the issue? Save people's lives in order not to risk your life. So what does God say? Don't worry, you're not risking your life. Dathan Aviram have been incapacitated. They've been neutralized. You don't got to worry about them. Right? Wait a minute. And let's say they weren't. So it says, what do you see from here? You see from here that if there was a specter of Moshe getting hurt, he wouldn't have to risk his life. So you see, you do not have to risk your life in order to save other people. That's what you see. You do not have to risk your life to save other people. Because Hashem said to Moshe, don't worry about it, you're not risking your life. So this is the Meshech Chachma's raya that you do not have to risk your life to save other people.
How did he not still risk his life? He went to power directly.
Wait a minute, yeah, but there's a problem that maybe if Dathan Aviram would have been alive, Hashem would not have told Moshe to go. It's only because Dathan Aviram were not alive that Hashem said to Moshe, go. So you see, if Dathan Aviram were alive, so it would be risking Moshe's life, he wouldn't go to Mitzrayim to save everyone else. So you see, if you are risking your life, you don't go to Mitzrayim. Right. So Shalom is asking over here, that's the Meshech Chachma. That's the Meshech Chachma's raya. That we see you don't risk your life to save other people. So I think you're asking the same question I saw Rabbi Usher Weiss ask. Wait a minute, cop the pick a second here. Moshe was risking his life anyway. He's about to go to Mitzrayim and say, he's about to stump his son to Mitzrayim and say, I want the Jews to leave. I mean, he was risking his life anyway. So how can you tell me that God said to Moses, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. Dathan and Aviram are dead. So you're not risking your life when you go to Mitzrayim. He was anyway risking his life. That's Sean's question over here. Right? But the answer is very simple. I don't think it's a question. Yeah, there was Of course, when God told Moshe to go to Mitzrayim, he was protected about anything from outside enemies, meaning anything from Paroi. From Paroi, he was protected. But there wasn't going to be any supernatural protection from infighting, meaning from the Jews trying to hurt Moshe. That there was no protection from. So Hashem obviously Hashem could do what he wanted. He could have done it. But that's not the way it worked. Yes, Moshe was protected from Paroi. That's true. But there was no supernatural protection against the other Jews hurting him. So Hashem said, don't worry about the other Jews, Dathan and Aviram, because they're dead or incapacitated. Or they're disposed. They've been disposed of. You don't got to worry about them. So that's the Meshech Chachma. This is Meshech Chachma. This is like the Gadol Dor. The Meshech Chachma brings the proof from this pasuk in Chumash that you do not have to risk your life, because Moshe would have not gone to Egypt if Dathan and Aviram was still alive, and that works with the Halacha. Then the Meshech Chachma says it's an open Mishnah. An open Mishnah? Yeah, an open Mishnah, which of course I didn't bring. An open Mishnah in Makis. We've all learned Makis. It says over there, famous Mishnah, someone who has to go to Ari Miklat for killing by accident. You have to go to Ari Miklat. It says there, you're never allowed to leave the Ari Miklat. It says there you can't leave the Ari Miklat, even to save someone. Hadoila eni yotzim Ari Miklai. La'olam. You never leave the Ari Miklat. Even if, so you're in the Ari Miklat, and you see someone out of the Ari Miklat drowning. No, you can't leave. You see that there's an avalanche. No, you can't leave, even though you're a rescue worker. Even if the whole Yisrael needs you like Yoyeh ben Sruya, you don't leave. The whole Jewish people need you like Yoyeh ben Sruya. Who's Yoyeh ben Sruya? Big fighter, right. He was the general of David. He also was David's nephew, because Struya happened to be David's, what? Yeah, Yoav ben Struya was David's nephew, and he was also his chief general. But Kitzer, it says here in the Rambam, you don't got to leave the Ari Miklat. You can't leave the Ari Miklat, even though everyone needs you. Why not? What's going on over here? Okay, the pasuk says that you're supposed to stay in the Ari Miklat, but this is extenuating circumstances. This is an emergency, right? So that's the Mishnah just says that. The Rambam seems to give a reason. V'im yotze hit the outside mitzvah. You know why you can't go out? Because if you go out, you're risking your life. Because the Goel Hadam may catch you and kill you. And therefore, even though all of Judaism, all of Jewry, the whole world Jewry needs you, you are the best fighter. Don't go out. Why not? Because the revenger, the Goel Hadam, may kill you. And you don't have to risk your life to save anyone else's life. This is the Ohr Somayach's proof. So he brings the proof from the Chumash, and then he brings the proof from the Rambam, that you do not have to risk your life to save anyone else. So,
It's not a special something, it's an extra sukkah.
what?
Meaning, we gotta go out down, saying like anyone who's going to war has this.
Oh, you're a genius. Yonatan, I'm not going to finish. Yonatan is asking a question. Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Wait 1 minute. This whole... it's going to take a while. Yonatan is asking, wait a minute. This whole conversation about suffix sakana, do you put yourself in suffix sakana, don't you put yourself in sakana, seemingly, we don't find... Every soldier is going to say, oh, I shouldn't go fight, you know? If I fight, I may put myself in suffix sakana. Not maybe, but sure. Right? So Yonatan is pointing out, correctly, this whole conversation about suffix sakana, do you put yourself in suffix sakana, is only when there's not a situation of war. Obviously, soldiers put themselves in suffix sakana. Right? So Yonatan is asking, wait a minute, this is a question of war. If the issue was about Yoav ben Struya, you know, we need the guy in the Ari Miklat for Yoav ben Struya. That's the issue of war. When everyone agree by war, you put yourself in suffix sakana. So that's what Yonatan is asking. How can you bring me a proof from this Rambam that we don't tell a guy to risk his life? Because when he leaves Ari Miklat, he is making himself available to the Goel Hadam. He's putting himself in danger. Yeah, but this is about war. This is about war. So I saw people ask this question. Amazingly, who asked this question I saw? In the Heichel Yitzchak. Who asked the Heichel Yitzchak? Rabbi Yitzchak Herzog. Who's Rabbi Yitzchak Herzog? One of the first chief rabbis of Israel. Who's his grandson? The president, who was not that religious, but his grandfather was a major league Talmud Chacham, and he asked this question that Yonatan asks. I didn't want to go through this. That Yonatan asks on the Ohr Somayach. How could he say the guy from the Ari Miklat can't go out because he's risking his life? But it's like a question of war. By war, you always risk your life. I don't think it's such a great question. I think the answer is obvious. The same thing like we said before. Yes, true, a soldier has to risk his life when it comes to war. But over here, he wasn't going to get killed by the enemies. Over here, he was going to get killed by insight. He was going to get killed by friendly fire. He was going to get killed for a whole different reason. So, the Goel Hadam, the guy who killed the Tzech B'Shoigig. Should I go out? I'm risking my life. Yeah, but it's a war. Yeah, but I'm risking my life about something that's not related to the war. I'm risking my life about getting killed for a side reason. So therefore, that's what I would have answered to Rabbi Yitzchak Herzog. Because it's a great question. Bottom line, we're not doing good here. Bottom line is, the Ohr Somayach, Meshech Chachma, one and the same, brings the proof from the Pasuk and the Chumash, don't risk your life, and bring the proof from the Rambam, don't risk your life, which is the Halacha, by the way, which is the Halacha. So it's very good. So we said the Torah to me will try to bring a proof not like the Halacha, and the Meshech Chachma brings the proof like the Halacha. Oh. Seemingly, we could say the story of Mordechai and Esther is exactly about this. What did Mordechai say? Esther, you get yourself over to Achashverosh and you beg to save your people. And what else to say? Wait a minute. The king has not called me in 30 days. If I go there illegally, I'll get killed. That's what that said. Forget about the issue of her having to live with the king. That's a whole different issue. Esther said, if I go illegally, I may get killed. So what do you see Esther said? I'm not risking my life for everyone else. Right? I'm not risking my life for everyone else. Finished. What did Mordechai say back? Did Mordechai say back, no, you're wrong, Esther. We pass like the Yerushalmi, that you're supposed to resign. That's not Mordechai said back. Mordechai said back, you got it all wrong. If you don't go, you're for sure dead. You're dead. You're for sure going to die if you don't go. And the Jews are for sure going to live. So it's on the contrary. You're the one in danger. I mean, Esther looked at it. How did Esther look at it? Esther looked at it. She's safe. Should I risk my life for everyone else? And if that's the outlook, that's correct. That's correct. But Mordechai said, that's not the way it's going, sister. That ain't the way it is. That ain't the way it is. You're the one in trouble. You're the one in trouble. So we see from the talk that Now, there is one more story. There are many stories, but the famous story of Harugei Lud. We all know the Gemara brings out Harugei Lud, and the Gemara says many times, no one will ever be able to enter the room with a Harugei Lud having Gan Eden, right? Right? What's exactly the lashon? Harugei Lud en kolberia yichol la'amad b'mechisasim b'Gan Eden. What is Harugei Lud? Who is he? Right? So the Gemara doesn't say what the story was. So Rashi brings down the story was that there was an emperor whose daughter got killed, and the emperor blamed the Jews, and he was going to wipe out all Lud or wipe out all Klal Yisrael. And these two brothers, Lulinus and Papa, said, we did it. They took the fall, and they got killed. Those are called the Harugei Lud. Oh, what do you see from over here? You could give up your life to save someone else. The Chayr we see from here, you could give up your life to save someone else. That's the Chayr what we see. And that's the big Chiddush, because no one said you could give up your life to save, for sure give up your life. Oh, so you have to say, which is a little bit problematic with the other proof, that to save all Klal Yisrael, you're allowed to give up your life to save all Klal Yisrael. That's what you have to say. Even though, if you think about it, the proofs he brought by the Meshech Chachma and Esther was also about all Klal Yisrael. But it's a little bit fuzzy. But that could be one answer. Or you could say they were going to die. It's not clear what the story was. It's not clear if this Lunas and Papas were also part of the decree. So then, for sure, they could give up their life because they were going to die anyway. It's just they took the fall for everyone else. It's not clear. Interesting enough, Rabbi Usher Weiss used that story. You know, there was a massacre in Hanover like 8-9 years ago, and Mike Harus was one of the people who got killed. He actually learned in Ohr Somayach, about two from Ohr Somayach, and he got killed. And the story was, his name was Chaim Rotman. And the story was, there was another guy who was also my friend, who actually fought off the terrorists. Eventually, he was a big, huge guy. And eventually he got killed. And a lot of people got saved because of him. And the question was that halachically right to do or not to do. Because that's exactly what we talk about here. Exactly what we talk about. Risking your life to save other people. So, Rabbi Shavai said, based on this story of Harugei Lud, you see, if it's a question of saving a lot of people, then you're allowed to risk your life. Right? Okay, but again, it's not 100%, 1,000% clear. Because again, we don't know. It depends on a lot of different things. But that's what he wanted to suggest. Be to the make. Rabbi Isai, we can go on and on and on over here. We could talk about Avram Avinu, how did he go fight for light? We could talk about Lavan and Shimon, how did they fight for Shechem? We could talk about how did Yehuda stand up to Yosef to try to save Binyamin. We could go to half of the Bible are talking about cases of people risking their lives to save other people. But be to the may, what is the bottom line? The bottom line is, we brought 2 failed attempts. We're going to say it's failed. Obviously, talk to me. It says not. That you should risk your life. Then we brought the Meshech Chachma, the story of the Mordechai. You don't. Haruge Lu is maybe an outlier because all of Klal Yisrael, and maybe also that they were themselves were in danger. At the end of the day, it's exactly like it came out last week. Halacha l'maisa, you do not risk your life to save someone else. That's halacha l'maisa. Mishnah Berurah, Aruch HaShulchan, everyone says you do not risk your life to save someone else. But now, we got to get to the finale here.
Next week.
Yeah. What about volunteering? What are the percentage? Okay, don't risk your life to save someone else. And let's say it's like a 1% chance of you dying and hit the 100%. What are the percentages? You can just like throw out. Don't risk your life to save someone else. What does that mean? What are the numbers, right? So what we're going to talk about is kidney donation now, and it all comes down to a famous Rabbi. Like I expect, Rabbi is a famous, he lived in Beis Yosef. He's probably authored the most tshuvas, over 10,000 about tshuvas. And there, he was asked a question. The question was like this. A king came over to we'll call Yaakov. The king said, Yaakov, I cut off your arm. If not, I kill Yitzchak. That was the question. Right? It's a real story. The king came over to Yaakov. Yaakov, if I cut off your arm, Yitzchak lives. Right? Should I cut off your arm or not? Or should Yaakov allow his arm to be cut off in order to save Yitzchak? That was the question. Now, this question is going to be divided up in two subcategories. We're first going to talk about where if you cut off Yaakov's arm, there is absolutely no sakana to Yaakov. You cut off his fingers or something that his ear, something that is sure he will not die. For sure he will not die. So that we have not been discussing this until now. This is a different shaila that we have not discussed until now. This is a shaila: do I have to give a limb to save someone's life? Plain and simple. Do I got to give my limb to save someone's life? That's the shaila we're going to talk about now. You could ask that by every law. A guy puts a gun to my head, eat chazer or lose a finger. Right? So the Rikanti dealt with this, and he says, I have a kal v'chomer. That you give up your limb to save someone else. What's a kal v'chomer? Very simple. Are you mechal Shabbos to save someone's life? Yes, it's clear. So a person's body is more important than Shabbos. But the Gemara says openly, and the Halacha is openly, you don't mechal Shabbos to save someone's limb. In a case where you know for sure, it almost never comes up. But in a case where you know for sure that it's only a question of a limb, you're not mechal Shabbos. Let's put it. Let's get it straight. Someone's life and Shabbos is weaker. Shabbos and a limb, Shabbos is stronger. So someone's life and a limb, for sure that someone's life should go over someone's limb. The kisser, you're mechal Shabbos for someone's life. You're not mechal Shabbos for someone's limb. We see a life is more than a limb. So says the Rikanti, very simple. It's a question of a limb or a life. You give up your limb to save someone's life, just like you give up your limb to mechal Shabbos in order not to be mechal Shabbos. So we'll save Henry in order that he shouldn't be mechal, in order that he should live. We'll mechal Shabbos. We won't save your finger in order not to be mechal Shabbos. We won't save your finger. So you see, your finger is less than Henry. So the Rabbi goes to town, and the Rabbi says, Rikanti, well, he said, you're making a big mistake over here. You're making a big mistake. This is exactly what we said in the beginning of the shir, in the beginning of last week's shir. You're mixing up things. Yeah, it's true. From Shabbos' perspective, Yitzchak's life is more important than my finger. That's true. We, mechal Shabbos, save Yitzchak's life, not to save my finger. That is true. From Shabbos' perspective. But here, the question is, do I have to give my finger for you? Here's a different question. Here's, Yitzchak, I like you, but I don't want to give you my finger. It's about me and you. It's about me giving something to you. It's not about Shabbos, about me giving to Shabbos. Yeah, I got to give my finger to Shabbos. That's right. And you don't got to give your body to Shabbos. That's right. But here, it's been under Lamat Chaveroi. And says the Rabbi, so therefore Rabbi says the Kavachomer or the Recanti is almost absurd. And the Rabbi's Paskin, there is no way you have to give up your finger to save someone else's life. And he says, Dorcher Dake Noyam, this is so obvious, the ways of God are sweet, and there's no way you have to give up your limb to save someone else's life. Oh, so what did Rabbi say? Let me go through the Rabbi. He says like this. If cutting off the limb would cause you a sakana, if you wanted to cut off, the king said, I'm going to take an internal limb, or something that maybe it's gonna, says the Radbaz, be sure you don't give up your limb. And if you do it, you're chassid shaita. You never risk your life for someone else. And if the question is just take up a finger where you're not risking your life, says the Radbaz, you don't have to, but you're a chassid if you do. You don't have to, because and there's no way you have to pay that price for someone else, but you are considered a chassid. So that's what the Rabbi says. If it's a sakana, which is what we came out the whole time, this is what we're coming out the whole time. If it's a sakana, you do not risk your life for someone else. If it's just a question of giving off your limb, you have a choice. And it's a mitzvah, but you don't have to. You're called a chassid. That's what the Rabbi comes out. But, and here is the big caveat here. There's another Adbaz, and he explains himself, and he says, this that I said, that you never risk your life, that's only when it's a 50% risk to you. When it's 50% risk, it's called you did an avera, if you risk your life. If it's less than 50%, then you have to risk your life. Unbelievable. So you see one Radbaz like, yeah, never risk your life. You never risk your life. Never risk your life. You see another Radbaz, and he says here, 50% Aveira, if you risk your life. Less than 50%, you must risk your life. And he says, look at the Gemara. What does the Gemara say? You see someone drowning. You see someone getting chased by bears. You see someone being chased by robbers. You have to save him. Obviously, the Gemara there's a risk for you. I mean, what's the case talking about? That you're Superman and there's no risk for you? So says the Rabbi, who's very cogent. He says it just makes sense that. So that's the Rabbah's numbers. Unbelievable. That's the Rabbah's numbers. So Rabbah's, what's the law? Guy puts a gun to you. Cut off, Yaakov, cut off your arm, or I'll kill Yitzchak. Says the Rabbah's, when there is no sakana or less than 50% sakana, if it's a question of losing your limb, you're allowed to, but you don't have to. You never have to lose your limb. Even no sakana at all, because it doesn't grow back. You never have to give up your limb, because that's for sure not going to come back. Even if there's no sakana, he wants to cut off your finger. A finger or his life. There's no sakana at all. Zero sakana. Still, you don't got to give your limb. You don't got to give your limb, because it'll never go back. We can't have that sacrifice. Should you? Yes, you should. But you don't have to. It's called the Maisa Chasidus. He says, Ashrei Chelkai. If it's a risk over 50%, whatever it is, taking off your limb or to save someone, it'll be a risk of over 50%. Aveira. Less than 50%, where it's not taking off a limb. Less than 50%, but not taking off a limb, then you must. You're over the line if you don't do it. So you see someone drowning, you're a pretty good swimmer, but and it's less than 50% chance that you'll die, you must. That's amazing. And Rav Yosef was asked, do you give kidney donations? So if you look at all that Chayim talking about it, the Minchas Yitzchak wrote in the 1960s, and he says, no way, there ain't no kidney donation, because it's more than a 50% risk. And when you look at by the time you get to other tshuvas, you get to Tzitz Eliezer, well, I'm not too sure it's a 50% risk. It's right there. It's right there. So maybe, meaning, when you get to Rabbi Yosef, which is already in the 90s or 80s, he says, the shore gives a kidney. You don't have to, because it's a limb and it'll never grow back. But you don't have to worry about risking your life. Rabbi Yosef said at that point it was only 1% risk. There's a 1% risk, and he brings down the Horid Baz, and he says, because of the risk factor, you're mechoyev. Just like you have to go save a drowning person if it's a 1% risk factor, even 49%. You don't have to because it's a question of a limb. Since the question of a limb that will never grow back, we say darkei anoyim. Now, this is the take of Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Moshe, and Usher wife. A little different, but I think the Rabbi is correct in his reading of the Ritbaz. Maybe next week goes to Moshe. Usher. Moshe said Moshe didn't have the Ritbaz. He said he didn't have it, so he has a little different. The bottom line is, should you give a kidney? The answer is, if you're a healthy person, it's a Maisa Chasidus and it's a mitzvah. You don't have to, but you should. By the way, I would have said that. I would have said you have to, because the whole thing is darkei noyam. You know, how could you give up a limb to someone else? I mean, no one sees that you don't have a kidney. Okay, a finger I can understand. An arm I understand. You don't have to because it's such a sacrifice. But who cares if you take away a kidney? No one knows. I have to know there's someone here who gave a kidney. You don't know who it is, but I have to know there is someone here. We may hear about it, but I have to know that there is someone. So. But that's what Rabbi Yosef says, and all the Achronim say. You don't have to give the kidney, but it's a big mitzvah. And don't worry about the risk, because the risk is less than 50%, and that's not an issue at all. Oh, what about giving blood, platelets? No question you have to. There's no question. There's no risk involved. There's no losing anything. The blood regenerates itself. There's no question. You have a chiyuv. No question. What about bone marrow transfusion? Here it gets a little bit difficult because it's very painful. Someone who gives a bone marrow transfusion, it's very painful for the patient. It's not a simple thing. Me, simply, I would have said you still have a chiyuv. Still have a chiyuv. A little pain. So what? There's no risk to your life. But here it's more like, maybe like giving up a finger, giving up an arm. Maybe, because it's so painful. Okay? And this is what basically what the Achronim come out. Now, with no further ado, I would like we have a specialist here. He'll tell us what his specialty is, and I wanted to hear a little bit about what he thinks about what are the risks of giving a kidney. I said 1%. I don't know what the numbers are today. Are they there? And so please, no further ado, how are we going to get the doctor to speak? So why don't you just move here, doctor? Just introduce you. You got to be with the camera, so the world should see you.
The camera move. It's okay.
Okay, so go ahead. First say
if
who.
I can speak like this, it's okay. So as how I find those, I've been a kidney doctor for over 50 years now, and maybe after 10 years of being a kidney doctor, my only sister, who had one child, after the delivery, she had some protein in her urine, which is an abnormal finding, but other than that, her kidney function was normal. She and the baby seemed healthy. I said to her, if sometime in the future you might need a kidney, your brother is here to donate to you. I was being almost facetious because there was no reason to think that what I was saying would ever happen. But I was wrong, and 20 years later, her kidney function had deteriorated to the point that she was close to going on dialysis or needing a transplant. And the other members of the family who had been evaluated for whatever reason were not available as donors, even though I was. So
how old are you then?
Close to 60.
Holy cow.
But to address the numbers for just a moment, by this time, the risk to the donor is much less than 1%. what is the risk to the donor? So there are two kinds of risks. One is you lose several days from the surgery, which everybody loses, but it's at most a monetary risk. There's virtually no pain because the surgery, the anesthesiologist put the donor to sleep. Exact numbers get better each year, but a tenth of 1%, a hundredth of 1%.
But wouldn't there be a risk, like when you get older, which you have, thank God, like at 90 years old, that at 90 years old, if you only have one kidney, you have less of a chance of, if something goes wrong? I mean,
Really, you're asking two different questions. What is the risk of surgery to a person that's 60 versus 20? So the kidney transplant programs, assuming they're in the Western world where there are policies, they evaluate the donor. And in my case, I had to have all sorts of x-rays and blood tests, and even went through what they call an exercise tolerance test, and get on a treadmill and they get your heart rate up to 120, 130, 140, and see if your heart shows any signs of ischemia. Thank goodness that did not happen in my case. And so I was prepared to give the donor, but I felt I needed to get Halacha. I don't then or now make major decisions in my life without seeking rabbinic input. I was living in San Antonio, so I went to the local Orthodox rabbi, Rabbi Aryeh Sheinberg, who I know very well, seeing as I daven with him 3 times a day, every day. He said he would rather not answer the question. I should speak to Rav Nata Greenblatt. Rav Nata was the posek for Middle America in those days. Came to San Antonio on a regular basis. I mean, all the background that Rabbi Fine has given, I was quite familiar with. I didn't think there was a halakhic question. Kidney donation by this time was very widely accepted. But I spoke to Rav Nata. Again, Rav Nata knew me pretty well. We'd done a number of things together in San Antonio. The mikveh, the eruv, the vada kashrus were all things that he was the posek for and I was in the middle of. So I asked him my question, and he said, Dr. Lifschitz, you're a kidney doctor. Of course, you have permission to give your kidney, but in fact, it may be a chiyuv. And that's really what...
he said a chiyuv.
A chiyuv on a relative...
On a relative.
Who knows the risks and benefits. So me being a dumb guy, I didn't have the courage to ask him, what do you mean, a chiyuv? I was prepared to do it. So
what I said is that it's a mitzvah, you don't have a chiyuv. That's what Rabbi says. It's a mitzvah, you don't have a chiyuv. But I was hesitant because Rabbi was talking about taking off an arm. This is something inside. People don't see it. You know, it's funny because when I looked at the Rav Asher Weiss and all the other writings, they're also very hesitant. They say, of a short mitzvah, maybe chiyuv.
No, Asher Weiss twice. Twice. They're two different.
Right, the different tubas and different things and everything. But again, my question was, I understand when you're 20 years old, you take the kidney. There's nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. But my question, when you become 80, 90, and you yourself start having kidney problems, maybe, wouldn't it be better that you had 2 kidneys than if you have 1 kidney? That's my issue. I know now at 20, at 40, 50, it makes a difference if you have 1 or 2. But since you donated it when you were 20, you're susceptible to a problem when you're 80, 90. Is that true or not true? That's what I'm trying to...
So Rabbi Fine's question is not new to Rabbi Fine. Every potential kidney donor wants to know the answer to this question because, fine, you may donate your kidney at some younger age, but thank goodness we each get 1 year older each year in the world we're in. So a number of studies have been done, and the question is, what do you compare the kidney donor to? So I'll describe 2 or 3 of them, but you'll understand that medicine is not a science, and statistics, although they come up with a number, depends on what your question is. So if you compare age-matched kidney donors to potential donors who for some reason were turned down or they refused after learning what was his. So they sound like it's a good comparison. If you do that comparison, if anything, the donors live the same or longer than the non-donors. Why is that? We don't know, but you could say, as I described you, the donor gets all sorts of tests to be evaluated. And if they fail any of those tests, then they're not used. So maybe the process...
So experiment is not a good experiment. You're saying, I understand.
So if you don't like that, and that's
Maybe because they did a mitzvah, so they're more protected.
So that study is in. So, I mean, if you're a doctor, the most definitive place to look for data is something called the New England Journal of Medicine, which comes out every week. And that study I described to you was in the New England Journal of Medicine 15 years ago. Additional studies have been done to compare age-matched donors with a population in a particular community. Again, the first study and the second study all showed that the donors at least lived as long or maybe longer than the age-matched controls. There's a more recent study from Scandinavia that looks at very large numbers of Scandinavian non-donors, age-matched, and at least the data as presented, and again, in the New England Journal, there is a slight increased risk to the donor. It's at the second or third decimal point. So from a practical point of view, you could say statistically, there's an increased risk, but to any one donor, it probably is immaterial.
Okay, thank you, Doc. There you go.
So my sister now, so when I gave my kidney, which is now 18 years ago, the statistics were the kidney donation in the recipient lasts about 10 years.
That's it?
At those days, that's 20 years ago. Yes, that was the statistics.
So again, the recipient will have to go back on dialysis after 10 years.
Or get a second transplant. And second transplants were and still are.
Really? Second? I didn't know the second
Clearly
transplant.
are in the business.
Wow.
So what happens? Of course, there's something called rejection. We have medicines to kind of hold back the body's own immune system. But those medicines are not perfect. Because if they were perfect, they would knock out the immune system, then the recipient would be at risk for all sorts of infections, which is true. But we try as transplant doctors, which I am not, to balance the risk of infection versus the risk of rejection. There's also a concern that some of our anti-rejection medicines are a little bit nephrotoxic, a present subject which is not yet resolved. Be it as it may, when my sister got my kidney 18 years ago, the predicted longevity of such a recipient was 10 years with that transplant. She is now 18 years, and her kidney function is basically equivalent to mine in terms of the blood tests. So it's her blood tests and my blood tests look about the same.
So
we each have one kidney.
So they took out both of hers and put in one?
No, they don't take out anything unless they absolutely have to.
They leave the two ones, the two
there. They continue to shrink. They are extremely small at this point and usually don't cause a problem. To take out the two kidneys is a whole nother operation.
Wow, so you're telling me when you donate a kidney, I didn't realize that you just you superimpose it on the other two that are already there.
So
something like that. Or you just like, you bypass it. You sort of you bypass it.
We'll take one more minute on the surgery. Okay? I mean, the kidney is in the back. It's got three connections to the rest of the body. It has an artery, it gets its blood supply. It has a vein, returns the blood back to the rest of the body. And it has a tube we call the ureter, which takes the urine and sends it down to the bladder. Other than that, the kidney is basically free-floating. It has no other attachments to speak of. So for the surgeon today, they do what they call laparoscopic surgery most of the time because they can go in with their little laparoscope, put a tie around the artery, and then the kidney shrivels because it's got no blood supply any longer. Then they put a tie around the vein, they put a tie around the ureter, and they just pull the kidney out. They kind of flip it over. Usually they take the left kidney from the donor, flip it over and put it in the pelvis of the recipient because then there's a artery and a vein and it's close to the bladder. So again, the surgery is quite easy from the surgeon's point of view. He or she can make the connection to the artery and the vein and the ureter relatively easily. And it works just fine.
Okay, wow. So here we have Rabbi Sai. We heard from a world expert. Less than 1%. It sounds like 100% risk. So call this number on the bottom and donate your kidney. No. It's a really big mitzvah. There's no question about it. It's an amazing mitzvah. Again, we came out that it's not a chiyuv, but it's right there. It's right there between being a chiyuv and not being a chiyuv. But it's definitely a ma'aseh chasidus. Bli neder, next week we will continue with kidneys and talk about the monetary aspects, monetizing kidneys. Okay? Bli neder. That's what I think.